Alright, let me get my slides set up because my computer died. What? I know, my computer doesn't like me. It's not my friend today.
It's
No,
yours?
that's Miss Gardner's computer.
It's Miss Gardner's
This
computer.
is Mrs. Gardner.
It only likes Miss Gardner.
It's like her initials and then
No, it's not. And you don't know that.
What's that big wolf in her?
Okay. So, you guys are going to draw what you think is going to happen.
Okay.
Alright, so you can draw either Jake driving on,
And when you get henchmen,
you can draw Jake driving on the speedway, alright, on the racetrack.
I already did.
No, that doesn't count. So, you're going to drive either Jake driving or whatever you think is going to happen. Because we're going to learn what happens now that Jake has been busted in the noggin, right? What happened to Jake, Cadence?
Kirby threw a wrench at there and then his blood was flying and then he took a wrong turn.
Yeah, so Kirby and him are the last two in the race. They're rounding a turn, and Kirby throws a wrench at him, and it hit him where?
In the temple.
In the temple, right in his temple. It hit him in his temple, and
And it
blood
started
came out of his
gushing
eyes. Yes, and it flooded his goggles, and he couldn't see. How gross.
Wait, that's what happens when you get.
Yes.
Oh gosh.
I know. Yes, Brandon.
Can't imagine it.
I don't know. Maybe Kirby was planning it all along.
Yeah, he said he. Well, they never take their win.
No,
Kirby said
Jake. Yeah. So we know Kirby's not that great of a guy at this point. And we know Pee Wee's up in the grandstands with Grace and Irene freaking out, right?
I hate you.
I know. Kirby's not my friend either. So, here are our words that we just had our quiz over. Alright, so we're going to say them really quick. Say gone. Say permanent. Say registration. Pit crew. Tinker. Temple. Alright, so while we're reading, imagine that you're in the grandstands watching this race. That's what you guys are going to start drawing, alright? Think about in the grandstands watching the race. What do you think is happening? Okay? Hey, voices are off so I can answer any questions before we start reading. Kaden? Sure. Kennedy, did you have a question? No? Okay. So everybody should know what they're doing. Your voice is going to be off while I am reading, right?
Yes,
Yeah. And you're going to color your paper. You're going to color it, draw it, everything. We're going to turn it in. So, it's going to be super important. All right. So we're on chapter 12. Grace ran. Nope, chapter 12. Grace ran like a deer down the bleachers, tearing her skirts. Irene and I were hard on her heels. We knocked people sideways and sky goggling as we rounded the track. The auto race went on. Yes, go ahead and start. Their apparition, Jack Rabbit, chugged along past us, though we were almost as fast. In my unhobbled skirt, I could clear the straw bales with daylight between. The Stutz pit crew came on the run from the other direction. There were people around Jake. He was sitting up, but Bud soaked his snow-white front. I ran a race with Grace to get at him, my mouth drier than a covered bridge. But even from afar, I saw his arm and how it stuck out all wrong. The arm he lit on. He sat where he'd landed, amid in the strewn straw. The blood branched from a dent in the side of his head. But he knew us. Grace's hat was over her ear. Her eyes started with tears. She fell to her knees and reached to lift off the goggles. Now here came a stretcher to carry him to the first aid tent. And where was I supposed to be? Who'd want to be on the pit crew when you could be in the race? Irene said. I looked, and she was settling her hat, calmer than Grace or me. Far calmer. She glanced at the Bearcat. Its nose was in the bales like it was feeding. There wasn't any damage that I could see. But how could I be in the race when it was going right past me? The gunning engines shook the earth, and I didn't want to leave Jake. He looked up. I broke my arm, Pee-wee, he said uneven. It just wasn't meant to be. None of it. That did it. Hand me the goggles, Grace, I said. And then gauntlet goggles. All right. So far, what just happened?
Jake broke his arm.
Jake broke his arm. He's bleeding. It's all over his beautiful, nice white coveralls that Grace had given him that matches the pit crew.
Wait, is Grace crying because of the overall?
I don't think he's crying because of the overalls.
Is this
So, but Irene says, why should Pee-wee be in the pit crew when she could be in the race? What do you think Irene is trying to tell Pee-wee, Ellie?
That she could take his place.
Yeah, she could take his place. But what do we know about women then? Did women race cars?
they weren't allowed to.
They weren't allowed to.
Women didn't get the right.
But they didn't.
Yeah, they
Some
didn't
of
get
them
the
might
same
not
rights.
have known if she was a girl.
Yeah, if she would have wore her hair up
Yeah.
and didn't, dress like Jake like she was at the beginning of the book, right?
Yeah.
So, Jake is headed over to the emergency tent, and Pee-wee is grabbing the goggles and ready to go. A couple of the stunts crew backing the Bearcat out of the bales saw me coming. Who could miss me? I was running flat out. My red hair stood out a mile around round goggles. Somebody was coming up behind me, but whoever it was better not try to hold me back because I was raring to go. It was Grace. Straw all over her. Keep your left foot down and use it as a brace, she said, grabbing my arm hard. Don't rush third gear. If you go into a skid, turn into it. Hello. Hey. Just Bentley Birdsall. Thank you. Bye. All right. She let me go and gave me a push, starting back to Jake. She said, and watch your oil pressure on the gauge. Then the crew was getting out of my road as I hit the running board and sailed into the driver's seat. I had driven an automobile once in my life and murdered a weasel. Do we remember when Irene took Pee-wee driving and she ran over that poor little weasel?
Yes.
Yeah. So now this is her second time driving and she's gonna race. I strained to see through the goggles, smeary with my brother's blood, My hand found the self-starter and the Bearcat growled, still hot from the track. I remember the clutch in the ground into first and making a half moon in the shattered bales, thumping back onto the track, hoping I was turned the right way. The Stevens Ferrier went past me. Yes, I was going the right way. I whined into second and geared down to third, taking my time, feeling my way. I could hear the crowd welcoming the Bearcat back. Through the goggles, the world was tinted red. The Chevrolet was just pulling into the race again. The ridges on the ruts were trying to twist the wheel out of my hands. The fumes from the other cars were making me silly and lightheaded. But I braced my left foot and gave it the gas with my right. I was flying on the straightaway, but the curve was coming up. I ground down to second gear and rode the ruts around it, leaning well over and making it. Then the straightaway again. The grandstand clapped me past, but I could hear my heart. So far she's going as fast as she can around the speedway. Did everyone seem excited for her to be driving? Yeah. I mean, they were cheering her on. They weren't telling her to stop, right?
Yeah.
And then she says that when she's looking through the goggles, they're tinted red. What does that mean, Dara? There's blood all over them still from Jake. That's kind of gross.
I'll just wipe it off.
Just wipe it off and move on. That's what Pee-wee did. Like a gun had gone off in my ear, Growler Kirby's Marmon shot past. He had to be going 50. I glimpsed his ugly kisser like a frog in goggles. I'll be all right, I said to myself, if he doesn't have another wrench. The track smoldered with dust, but there were slicks of black oil. The Chevrolet zoomed by, throwing dirt and caking my goggles just as I was trying to see around the curve. But around it I went, gearing down and past the Jackrabbit. But it was dead in the water, and the crew was running to push it out off the track. I was better than half blind now. My right shoe was nearly on the floor. The Bearcat was almost full out. and I tried telling it that it was good as the Marmon and better than the Chevrolet. I don't know if it heard, but I was coming up on the Stevens Duryea and wondering how to pass him when his right rear tire blew. He went into a spin. I'd hit him broadside right quick if I didn't teach myself how to swerve. The Bearcat leapt from rut to rut, and my rear axle wanted to go into business for itself. For a moment, I was on the grass of the infield, but back on the track again as the Stevens Duryea spun out and turned over. The crowd hollered and onlookers fled back from the bales, but I had problems of my own. Dead ahead, the Chevrolet was coming up to pass the Marmon. Growler, naturally, wasn't going to put up with that. It was hard to see through the brown air, but I was right there on their tails. When they were even with each other, Growler swerved at the Chevrolet. Their front wheels clanked together and threw sparks. The Chevrolet, going its limit, edged away. Growler took after him to run him off the track entirely. The Chevrolet driver was mad now. He swerved back and caught Growler off guard. There was a clash and a clatter as Growler's front fender trembled and his hood flew up and off. It nearly hit me. Now the Chevrolet and the Marmon seemed locked. They didn't see the oil slick, and of course I couldn't. But they slid through it, linked arm in arm, and I straddled it, which was pure luck. They were coming up the curve, banging together, making a tremendous racket, when Growler stood up in the winged Marmon. In his raised fist, there was a tire iron to brain the Chevrolet driver with. So no, Growler didn't have another wrench. So she's saying he doesn't have another wrench, but what did he have? Cadence? Growler, what did he have? Remember his Growler Kirby. A tire iron. So it's one of those big long things like this, made of iron. And
A rod?
yeah, like an iron rod.
Better not throw it in jail.
So he didn't have, he didn't have another wrench, but he was ready to beat someone with that tire iron, right? So
You should go to jail.
he should go to jail. You think so?
You should get it. For like 20 years.
Sacrifice?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So she's watching this happen. The two cars in front of her, the Marmon, which is Growler's, Kirby's, and the Chevrolet, which is just another guy's car. And they're linked together because they kept bashing into each other. So now they're stuck, and they just went through an oil slick on the track.
They should have slept.
Yeah. Making the curve, locked to another auto at this speed, and standing and throwing a tire iron was a lot to get done if you were trying to be accurate. Still, Growler might have managed it. But a front tire burst with a pop. The tire iron went off into space. The two autos swung around, radiator to radiator, and skidded sideways to a stop that blew all their tires and blocked the track. Growler sprawled over his hoodless hot engine. I made it round them by inches and took off to the infield again. The crowd roared. The Bearcat roared. I think I may have been somewhat out of my mind. I found the track and zigzagged back onto it. What lap was this? A man held up the sign, but who could read it? I was beginning to know the track now. A dip here, a rut there, full of oil over there. Then, ahead, were the Marmon and the Chevrolet again, horns still locked in a dusty lake of leaked radiator water. They were going nowhere, but I'd squeezed around them before and did again, though I left my back bumper behind. So what does she mean when she says that? She squeezed around them before and back again and left her back bumper behind. Tate?
She squeezed through the last time and then her bumper got caught and blew off.
Yep, her bumper got caught and it flew off. So she's missing a few pieces of poor Grace's Bearcat, right?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Oh dang, I just left Growler. Ahead on the curve, it began to dawn on me that I was the only auto left moving. I was chasing myself around this track, around and around, 10 times at least. The wind screamed at me and yanked my hair. My left foot was permanently braced. But my heart throbbed in tune with the engine, and we just kept going, sending walls of flung dirt over the hulks of my old rivals. We kept going. I lost all notion of time when it ran out, as me and the Bearcat came up on the grandstand once more. The groove of the rut grabbed the front right wheel. We veered and swayed. The steering wheel wrenched itself from my grasp. I heard the lock nut pop when that front right wheel spun off the auto and bounced at high speed up into the grandstand. The car tipped, and the right front fender and axle plowed a hairpin furrow as the Bearcat swung around and crossed the finish line backwards. So what just happened?
Backwards.
Yep. So she's driving. She realizes she's the only car left in the race. So they're driving along, and she hears a pop as she goes into a rut. And then the whole tire just flings off, goes up in the grandstand. And then the Bearcat starts turning because it has no tire. So it starts turning and it goes to tip to roll, and it doesn't. She got lucky, and it slides backwards across the finish line.
Oh, she lucky.
She's the only car left.
So she wouldn't win anyway.
She's the only
Well,
one.
but as long as she finishes, right? So do you think she finishes and wins?
Yeah.
No. Raise your hand if you think that she just lost because she lost a tire.
No.
Raise your hand if you think she won because she crossed the finish line.
Yeah.
It matters if you cross the finish.
I was about to say, I mean, I don't know that it matters if you have your tire, if you're allowed to have tire irons and wrenches thrown at you.
It
in a
doesn't
little
even
race.
matter if you don't have your car.
As long as you have your car, right?
It doesn't matter what you lose. It's just if you are inside your car and if you have your car,
Mhm.
then you can win.
Yeah.
But
So,
she's gonna make it with 2 wheels, but she has to watch out. And she has to turn a little so it doesn't go on the floor screeching.
yeah, that would be really, ugh. That noise would hurt my ears. A
It'll-
picture of me, of all people, ran in the Indianapolis Star that Sunday. I was still sitting in the Bearcat at an angle. It's after the race, and I'm all brambly hair and caped goggles. An article ran on the second page of the sporting section as follows. So this is what the article says in the newspaper that is about her winning the race. The title was Backward Redhead, Only Finisher in Rustic Race. So then it reads, in an upset destined to go down in local history, 14-year-old Eleanor McGrath from the Unincorporated Hazelrig Settlement was the only finisher in the Hendricks County Fair's first ever 10-mile stock auto dirt track event. She drove, or at least aimed, a customized Bearcat running under the colors of the Stutz Company of Indianapolis. The plucky and headstrong miss took over the wheel when her brother was flung out, sustaining a broken arm and facial injuries. With her pluck of luck, Miss McGrath completed the race and, in fact, ran a mile over, but crossed the finish line ingloriously back to front. A wheel loosened from her machine, climbed the grandstand, where it knocked down and slightly injured R.L. Bystander, a photographer in the employee of this magazine.
Is this true?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
What this winner by a member of the Fair Sex predicts for the legal posture of women competing against men in American auto racetracks is unknown at this writing. Fair officials declined to award the $50 prize to young Spadette as an unregistered and underage driver taking over in mid-race. It is hoped that the county will invest the prize money in track improvements before another year. A competitor in the race, Mr. G. Kirby, asked his reaction to being bested by a young girl and replied, "If females were meant to drive, where is it in the scriptures?" Alright, so that's the end of this chapter. What do you think, like that article that I just read, right? It kind of looks like this. What do you think it's saying? Can somebody kind of like reword it a little bit for me? Kennedy? What? Yeah, she was first lady to finish a race, period, right? Did she get the money?
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
No. Yes.
Maybe, I don't know. She didn't. The fair said she was an unregistered competitor and an underage driver. She was not allowed to win any of that money, even though she won the race.
That is not fair.
It's kind of.
But she's still proud.
It's rules. Rules are rules, Noble.
Rules are rules, you're right.
Some rules are not fair. Some rules are fair.
She won the race. What was the rule? If you won the race, you get the prize money.
Yes, that's true.
If you won the race, you get the prize money. But just because she's a girl, you don't give her prize money.
So then they asked Mr. Growler Kirby how he felt being beat by a girl. He said, if females were meant to drive, where is it in the scriptures? He's meaning the Bible. Why isn't it in the Bible if females are supposed to be driving? Would you find that in the Bible?
No! You learn about Jesus in the
Kirby
Bible.
is so crazy.
It doesn't say men.
It doesn't say men can drive in the Bible. All right, so we're going to review a little bit with some questions, okay? So go ahead and put your pencils down. Put your eyeballs on me. All right. What were Jake's injuries? Raise your hand. Jacob?
Just broken arm.
All right, what else? Chase?
His eye?
Yeah. His eyes were bleeding from getting hit in the temple, right?
I can't believe that, just gushing blood out of your eyes.
How does Pee-wee decide to join the race? Cadence?
She just put the goggles on and started driving.
Yep, she just kind of took over the Bearcat, right? Why is Grace the one to give Pee-wee tips on how to drive? Why would Grace be the one, Adeline?
Because Grace knows a lot about cars, and Pee-wee doesn't know how to drive because she's only 14.
Yeah, and Grace's family built these cars for a living. That's their job, right? We know that. So, knowing that, Grace probably knows a lot about this car. Does that make sense? So how do you think the crowd welcomed the Bearcat back? What did the book say? Were they super welcoming?
No.
No, they didn't cheer her on?
They did.
They did cheer her on, you're right. They really encouraged the Bearcat back, right? So how did the other cars get out of the race? Kennedy? Did you lose it? Cadence?
They kept on bumping into each other, and maybe the car parts fell off, or when they were stuck together, the grease landed across and crashing down on the side.
So I know Kirby and the Chevrolet got stuck together, right? And then there was another one that got stuck in a puddle of oil,
I think.
right? All right, so why did the car cross the finish line backwards, Raiden? Do you remember? No. Raylene?
Because the tire flew off.
Because the tire flew off, it all popped, and then it just kind of spun around, right?
Yeah. And she drove backwards.
She drove backwards. So why did Pee-wee get that prize money?
Because she's a girl and
Raven, you know this one now? All right, why did Pee-wee get the prize money?
she's too underage.
She's underage, and she wasn't wasn't registered. You're right.
But they said whoever wins the race gets the prize money.
You said anybody.
Anybody?
I know. All right, go ahead and finish. Wrap up your drawings, okay?
I made the weirdest drawing.
Oh yeah.
You don't throw it away.
Good job. I love it.
I don't like it. I type my best.